Hello, welcome back to the Max Out Your Life podcast. I'm your host, Cody Reinhardt, and as always, Brad Beal. Hello, sir. How are you today?
Doing well.
Doing good? Yeah. Had a good weekend?
It was pretty relaxing. Saw Top Gun.
Oh, yeah. Was it good?
It was really good.
Nice. Awesome, man.
Very entertaining.
Our episode today is we're talking about movement patterns over muscle groups, and I am super excited to talk about this one because I see this happen a lot. All over Instagram. You walk into a commercial gym, everyone's training like a bodybuilder, and yet no one is planning on going on stage. And so we're going to talk about why training for movement patterns is better than training for muscle groups, not only for performance, but overall for the general population.
Yeah.
So, this is a big thing when we bring in new coaches, that it's can be a very challenging concept to understand, is we're looking at it as this is a hinge, not this is a hamstring only exercise. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's, at least for sure for general population, it's always about muscle groups. Like I'm going to train my chest and my back today, or I'm going to hit my biceps and shoulders.
Yep. And that's actually not the most efficient way to train when you're on limited time.
Right. Because then you're limiting compound movement. You're limiting how heavy you're going.
Exactly. Or if you only have an hour to train 3 times a week, I can't possibly hit body parts enough to actually make the progress that I need to be making.
Yeah, and
which is what I see with a lot of people.
And especially being a natural lifter, like you need to train your body multiple times a week because you're just not going to be able to get enough volume and intensity out of a training session if you're not on drugs.
Exactly. So if you're one of those people who have, maybe you saw progress in the beginning and you stopped seeing progress now, or you've been there for 3 years and you look pretty much the same, like this is going to be an episode for you here, because what I'm finding with most people is that their training program does not match, number one, what their goal, doesn't go with their time constraints, and it overall isn't actually progressive. But I guess we're not going to get into a flat out programming discussion today, but I guess part of this is programming, right?
I guess if it turns into it.
Yeah.
Why do you think people fall into that though? Like, how do you think that all got started? Arnold. I was about to say that.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Arnold, baby, like everybody, because that's what he's doing, and he's jacked, and if you look at any of the most jacked guys in the gym and ladies in the gym, like that's how they're training, well, they look like I want to look, so therefore I need to train like them. The issue with that is most of those people that train like that are in the gym 2 to 3 hours a day, 6 days a week, sometimes more, which that's insane, but even 6 days a week, and you're able to do that a little bit more than, like when you have 2 hours, then you can do muscle groups. It makes much more sense if your goal is aesthetics.
Yeah, I feel like it was definitely probably that era that just has hung around this whole time.
Yep.
And it's kind of saturated the market for the most part. There's a few good ones out there, though, that are trying to change the game a little bit.
Yeah.
But I feel like, they even came out with the movie Generation Iron. Is that what it was? Or Pumping Iron?
I'll be honest, I couldn't watch the whole thing.
Yeah.
I made it like 30 minutes. I'm like, this doesn't really interest me.
Yeah. But that exactly what you're saying is it got so popular and people wanted to look like that, not realizing how much time and effort that takes to develop that physique. Like it's not that it's not feasible for the general population, but it's not nearly as effective or as attainable. Yeah.
Well, and even for the people who are doing it at a professional level who are enhanced, meaning, they're taking SARMs or steroids or whatever else that they're on, they're still training freaking hard, man. Like steroids aren't a shortcut. The guys and the gals that look the way they look and just look holy cow, they're still putting in the hours on top of the fact that they're enhanced. So I think that's another part of why this makes it hard for people, because they don't realize the majority of people in the gym that look like they do, look like movie stars, they're enhanced. So unless you're going to be enhanced, you're never going to look like them. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
They're on the juice. That's why they look like that.
Yeah. And then a lot of the programs are just they're basic too. Like if you went on bodybuilding.com or anywhere on the internet, it was like, I need a bodybuilding split or I need something like that. They're going to be pretty basic. Mm-hmm. And that's another issue that people are falling into. Powerlifting too, I feel like.
Yeah. So what's the problem with it being basic? Like, why is that a downside for you?
Well, if it's just telling you to do like 4 sets of 10 reps of like a dumbbell bench press without any guidance on intensity or what it should feel like. Mm-hmm. For those that don't really know much, they're just going to like pick up a pair of 15s and do 20 reps and then they'll be like, all right, feels good. On to the next one. Yeah. And that's just leaving so much on the table.
Or what I find a lot is that people would chase the burn too much. Yeah. You know, like you just said, I'm going to go and knock out 20 reps, but why am I not building any muscle? Because you just did 20 reps. That's why you're in the wrong rep range there, dude. And like, yes, volume is the principle to putting on muscle, but at the same time, if you're doing sets of 20, like, unless you're doing like rest pauses or something like that, then sets that big aren't going to help you build muscle.
Yeah. And what do you see as another like main issue or the main issue of training like a bodybuilder and not using the movement patterns?
I think it's less effective because you think just take the example of a curl for a second. I'm really only working one muscle when I'm doing a curl, right? If I'm doing something like a pull-up or a row or those are probably good examples there. Yeah, I can work the bicep a little bit as well as I'm working other muscle groups as well. If I'm working the pull-up and I'm doing that, or I guess we'd say chin up, so the palms are facing towards me when I'm doing it, I'm working the biceps, I'm working the lats, I'm working the grip, I'm working the upper back. Whereas if I'm doing a curl, I'm just working the bicep. So with the muscle group, I'm working less muscles at one time. And so therefore, I can't hit the muscle as many times. If I break it down into its movement patterns, hinge, squat, lunge, pull, push, and then I always throw in carry, doing something like a pull-up, aka a pull, and if I'm pulling 3, 4, 5, 6 times a week, I'm working my biceps actually more frequently throughout the week, just not as much in each session. Mm-hmm. And then if I'm like, I need specifically my biceps to be a little bit bigger for whatever reason, then I put in specific bicep work on top of all the other stuff, instead of just saying, well, I'm going to work just this one muscle group and then just that one muscle group and then one muscle group. And it's not nearly as efficient for general population. Once again, this conversation, just so we're clear really quick, is talking about people who are not going on stage, who don't have the ambitions of being a bodybuilder or physique competitor or bikini or anything like that. So just so that we're on the right page on that.
Yeah. Yeah, because like you're saying, it's you're able to hit that muscle group a lot more throughout the week, which is super important. But you're also being more time effective because you probably really, for most people, only got that 30, 60 minutes to work out.
Exactly. So if you're doing that, would it be better to pick one exercise that uses, 5 or 10 main muscle groups, or go in there and do one muscle group at a time and then have to leave? So it's going to be a lot better.
Mm-hmm. So you kind of mentioned it a little bit as far as mixing in the bodybuilding into the training program. Yeah. So kind of how would you go about doing that?
It would depend on the experience level of the individual first. So for me, let's say just a general, like, okay, I had a client a little while ago, and the main focus was to lose a little bit of weight and to get a little stronger. So with that being the goal, the body fat percentage needs to be low enough so that we can actually see the muscle underneath it, right? So at this point, I'm not saying there's no point in muscle growth training or hypertrophy training, but there's less of it in potency because we can actually see it. So we really need to work on getting the body fat down. So we would do some sort of strength exercise. So I'll just give the example of, we did back squat that day, and then we would do a couple higher rep things where trying to think of his exact program. I want to say we did seated presses and we supersetted seated presses with, if we did back squats that day, I think we did lunges. And then after we did that, we did a few sets of tricep. I really like the high rep banded stuff, all that Louis Simmons banded stuff. But then we work on the triceps with some bands, and that would basically be how I would use the single joint or like the quote unquote bodybuilding stuff is at the end of a session based off of what do I need to do to make his other lifts or the client's lifts better. If we struggled in the squat and the reason that he was struggling is that the quads weren't quite big enough, then the exercise that I would pick would be specifically to help those quads get a little bit bigger. And that's basically how I choose my my bodybuilding exercises or single joint stuff.
Mm-hmm. So you look at the program, you lay out the push, pull, squat, hinge, core, carry.
Exactly.
Lay that out, and then throughout the week you're putting in smaller pieces like accessory movements at a little bit higher volume or even higher weight depending on what you did earlier in the session to kind of supplement whatever the main focus was that day.
Exactly. Like, right? And it could be to the day, it could be the overall need. Sometimes clients, so one client that I had really struggled on all of their pressing stuff, like all of their pressing stuff from overhead pressing to push-ups to bench press to everything. And so I was like, okay, we need to do a lot of tricep work. But if you do all of the tricep work on one day, then you're just blown up and you can't do anything. So we did triceps more frequently throughout the week just because they needed that more. And their quads were already super developed. And so we actually did the less quad work and did more on working on the hamstrings and the glutes to make them overall like just stronger and their legs a little more well-rounded, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what people, I think is good for them to understand too with a program that is like whole body encompassing is that it's still on like a split regimen. Like you still have that main one or two lifts in that day that you want to focus on. Like if it was like, we're not going to just back squat every single day, or are we?
No, we're not going to do that.
So you could still do like Monday was your squat day, but then you fill in the rest with that upper body, the hinging.
Exactly.
And then Tuesday would maybe be your main bench day for your push. And then you'd fill in and you'd still do some sort of squatting, but maybe it's lunges or
exactly
something like that.
Yeah, and actually for the listeners, we're going to have a template in the show notes they can go and check out. That'll have a couple 3, 4, and 5 day template examples where they can take a look at this movement pattern stuff and kind of see how to put together a workout. When you see the template, it'll make a little more sense of what we're talking about. And when you follow the pattern, you'll see that, oh, wait a second, this is actually a lot simpler than I thought to put things together. It's just that most people don't realize that there actually is a pattern to it, that there is a process to it. It's not random, although it sometimes may look random. It's not random if you want long-term results, I guess is the best way to do that. Like anybody can give you a workout that makes your muscles burn and makes you breathe hard, but to actually make progress, that's something completely different.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been training this way?
I'd say, so I've been a coach for 10 years, so I'd say probably about like 7 or 8. In the beginning, because I just did so much kettlebell stuff that a lot of the kettlebell stuff is pretty hinge heavy. So if I'm doing a clean, a swing, a snatch, like those are pretty hinge heavy. Now, you're not doing a ton of weight generally. I mean, now obviously we have the really heavy kettlebells that I can do like the 203 pound, I used the 150 last week for doing sets of 10, and but generally speaking, I was just kind of doing a lot of bells and your basics like push-ups and dips and deadlifting here and there, and did a lot of lunging. And then after a while, it was like I actually got injured is what it was. I was squatting too much. I had a really bad knee injury, and then that's when I actually found out about Active Life and started following Active Life. and they had this whole system of how to assess people and like a strength balance assessment, and they talked about all these movement patterns, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I always felt like there was a smarter way to train. I just didn't actually know it. And then once I saw how they were kind of putting things together, then I just took the ball and I ran with it. And I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much more sense. And I started implementing that into myself, and my knee pain went away in about 6 weeks, and I started giving it to clients, and then their results were just that much better because it was properly balanced between the pushing and the pulling and the hinging and the squatting and the lunging. And that's great that, lunges are challenging and they make you sore, but do I really need to do them 4 times a week? Probably not.
So you say you've had a lot of success with how your own body feels, how your client
absolutely
have felt switching to more of this training style.
Yeah. And I also don't have clients whose goals are, like I said, to walk on stage. Like the clients that I work with, they're like, hey man, I want to be able to hang with my kids. I'm getting out of shape, and they want to go out and go on a hike, with their scout troop, or they want to go on a bike ride or just kick the ball around, and I can't hang with them when that happens. And so I just need to get healthier. Or, I went to the lake to go kayak, and, I hurt my back, or I hurt my back doing, yard work. That's a pretty common one. And so we need to hit as many muscle groups as we can in a training session, because that's how they're going to be using it in their life.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and I think what a lot of people don't realize with a training split like this too is it's a lot more athletically based.
Exactly.
It encompasses, your whole body throughout the training session. And if you go to a lot of like Division I pro level programs, they're going to be running this type of training.
Yeah.
And I think that's a skill, or at least a regimen, that a lot of people have lost. Like a lot of them did competitive sports growing up, or they played collegiate sports, and they probably trained like this, and they probably felt their best, and then they got away from it.
Yep.
Why do you think people switch gears out of training how they used to when they were younger, or competing when they were at their best?
That's a great question. I feel like the biggest reason is you kind of go back to the aesthetic side of stuff. You see that super jacked person in the gym who just looks just super chiseled, and their physique is just like on point. You're like, man, I want to look like that. And I think that's what people chase. And I mean, don't get me wrong, the pump feels good, man. You get a nice little pump going. I mean, I know you've been doing more and more of those pump sessions, you and the wife lately, and it's a good feeling.
Yeah.
But it should be something that's used appropriately and not just like all the time. And even when you do your pump sessions, they're more of what I would consider like functional bodybuilding.
Right. Yeah. I would try and incorporate. Well, Saturday we did triceps and biceps, pull-ups, dips, core. I did some abs and then carry as well, all in one
session.
Short little block, and it gets the heart rate up, works my whole body. But it also has a purpose of, it's a good amount of volume, which supports my joints when I start lifting heavy and going at higher intensity. Exactly. So it's all just trying to build that foundation up.
And I think how you just worded that is the important missing link. Like, we're not anti single joint exercises or bodybuilding exercises.
Right.
We're anti using it as a end all be all for a training methodology.
Yep.
That's what we're saying that we're against.
Yeah, because it definitely, like, bodybuilding definitely has a place in every sport, because it is so good for your tendons, for your joints, because it produces so much blood flow to that muscle. Yeah. And it creates hypertrophy, and the bigger the muscle, you're going to have a stronger support structure.
Yep.
But to only do that, I wouldn't really get anywhere. Like, I wouldn't see any progress.
Yeah. Well, and the way in which you use them, I think, is also important. You'll talk to some, and it's like they may do pull-ups occasionally, but instead they're doing like lat pull-downs and things like that to work the lats. And it's like, I'm not saying don't ever do lat pull-downs, but what I'm saying is you should do pull-ups more than you should do lat pull-downs.
Yeah.
I guess that if that kind of sums up what we're talking about here, that's how I would wrap that up.
Yeah. And going back to the athlete thing, like, a lot of people are losing that ability to develop power They stop training agility, balance, coordination, like all those. Yeah. You stop training them, you're eventually going to lose them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's just what I was going to say. Like even things like, bounding or ladder drills or, there's that spectrum of explosiveness and power, right? So it's like, I think too much people are on the side of it's got to be weight-based all the time. What about just doing jumps? Mm-hmm. Even with just a body weight or a box or hurdles or, running sprints. Like you want to talk about an athletic builder, go out and start running sprints, like, and I'm not saying go run, we're going to run sprints, we're going to go do 100 yards. Like, come on, man. There's a time and a place and there's a way to do it for sure. But it's like all those things that I think you're exactly right of you lose. As soon as you start losing one ability, then it's like, then you lose another and you lose another and you lose another. And before you know it, you're 50 and 60 years old and you're that person saying, well, I can't do anything anymore. It's like, but you limited yourself on how you made yourself stronger and more fit. Mm-hmm. And by having a more well-rounded athletic approach, no matter what your goal is, even just to be able to hang with your kids, having this focus of, I want the ability for my body to be able to do anything that I want to do. I may only go on a leisurely walk with my kids, but if I wanted to, I could sprint. If I wanted to, I could jump and I could climb and I could, do all these other activities. And that's how you have this full body of health.
Yeah, I think people, when they get out of high school, college, they just start coasting. Like, obviously, life gets busy and all that stuff, but if you're still working out, you can still do these things.
Exactly.
And by not doing them anymore, like you just said, you're limiting so many, like, more opportunities that you could do with your family or so many health outcomes that you could avoid, especially when you get older. Like, how many people end up in the hospital because they can't keep themselves up? Or how many people have to go to assisted living because they can't stand up out of a chair? Yeah. And all that stuff can be avoided if, when you started training like an athlete when you were young, if you kept that same push, pull, carry, do some power, do some agility, all that stuff will stay with you.
Absolutely. And obviously, I think the point you just made is excellent. And I think that where people get hung up on it is like, we'll say they're in their 50s. It's like, yeah, but I can't do what I did in my 20s. Well, dadoy, you're not 20 anymore, mm-hmm. right? But it's like, do you still have the ability to be explosive? And that explosive carries over. I mean, obviously, this isn't really a thing until maybe like I guess some in the 60s, like 70s and 80s, like slip and fall prevention, right? Like, if I have no explosive power in my body, if I trip on the curb, I don't have the ability to pull my foot out really quick and catch myself from falling. And then what happens when that happens? I'm 80 years old, I fall on the ground and I break my hip, and well, that happens again and again and again and again, and well, eventually I'm bedridden because I literally can't walk or I'm in a wheelchair, right? So explosive power in and of itself, while it is absolutely needed for athletic endeavors, like the point of what you're trying to make, and I just want to make sure our listeners understand this, is when you make that focus of training like that athlete, yes, that attribute of power is something an athlete needs, but it's not something that goes away for everyday use. Mm-hmm. Strength, power, cardiovascular, heart health, being able to actually keep your heart rate elevated for a certain amount of time. Not that it needs to be like a crazy, I was going to say Sparta type of workout every single day, but you need to be able to have proper heart health. And when you have all those in balance, then your life is going to be a lot better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just shifting the mindset of, okay, I'm no longer an athlete. I don't need to train like an athlete anymore, but those principles apply
all the way through
your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
The only difference is you're not going to be like going crazy with your buddies in the gym and like doing whatever sport you were playing. Yeah. But like to be able to not fall and run with your kids. Like I remember my dad, I'd race him in the parking lot because he was an ex-football player and he still had that athletic ability and he's still pretty healthy right now. So it's like that's what people should be striving for. If Absolutely. They can keep that in their training.
Absolutely.
Carries over for a long time.
Yeah. Or, you have a lot, if you think about, I forgot the figure now, but like the number of 40 to 50-year-old men who blow out their MCL, you know what they're doing? Playing basketball. They haven't played basketball forever, and they decide they're going to go play a pickup game. Mm-hmm. And what happens? Bah! and they go and blow something. Or even if they have been playing and they're trying to play like they were when they were 20, yeah, they're not doing any strength training, they're not doing any plyometrics, they're not taking care of their tendon health. Eventually your body is going to come back to bite you if that's the case. And then now you're saying that you're just not going to do any of these fun activities for the remainder decades of your life. Just, to me, doesn't sound like a fun way to live. Like, if I choose not to do it because I don't want to do it, that's one thing. But then saying that I can't do it because physically my body won't hold up and allow me to do it, that's something completely different, because that doesn't need to be the case. I mean, there's guys and gals in their 80s and 90s that are, still going to powerlifting competitions. Mm-hmm. But granted, the weight may be like 70 pounds. So what? Like, good on you, man. Like, that is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, I would love to be able to do that in my 80s and my 90s for sure.
Yeah, I think what you just said is huge. Like, there's so many adults that are still enjoying, like, trying to get in rec leagues or playing golf and doing all that stuff, but their training is nowhere near similar to what they want to do. And so it doesn't prepare them, which leads to those injuries that are like, oh, it's just because I'm old. It's like, you didn't prepare your body for anything you're doing.
Yeah, you're playing all this golf, and yet you're not strengthening your shoulders, your hips, or your legs, or anything, and you wonder why you're having knee and shoulder issues. Mm-hmm. Like, that's exactly why, because you're not training the right way to prepare you for golf. You didn't need it in your 20s and your 30s because you were young enough that your bodies were able to be pretty resilient. But as soon as you hit that 40 mark, that's where everything changes. Mm-hmm. And by making it a priority, no matter how old you are. I mean, I'm working with clients now that didn't start until like their 50s and their 60s, so and we actually just started working with a lady today that's in her 70s. It's never too late. Just get started and get up and get going.
As far as like people figuring out training, like I know we're putting out the template that they could follow.
Yeah.
But as far as maybe a 3-day thing.
Yeah, I would say start off with 3 days. That's usually the way I like to tell people to do it.
And aim for whole body, more compound.
Exactly. Get out there and move around, once or twice a week. Get out and either run sprints, get on a bike, go out, especially when the weather's nice like it is right now. Get out and enjoy the weather, get some vitamin D, and just small little changes like that will make a huge difference. Mm-hmm. And the biggest thing that I'll leave with is, don't make this complicated. If you have time to do one thing, that's fine. Then pick one thing and go in and do it. And maybe so that one thing this day is I'm going to go and I'm going to lift weights. The next day, maybe I'm going to do something like run sprints. And the next day I'm going to do something like, let's say you don't have time to get to the gym and you're going to do body weight. Okay. Each one of these things took less than 30 minutes to get done. Like, it can be very, very simple. Yes, if you have an hour, that'd be fantastic. Get in there an hour 3 times a week. But if you can't get started, if you have to wait for one more month to get started because you're waiting for your schedule to change, don't wait. Mm-hmm. Just go do something today.
Yeah. Awesome.
That'd be my biggest takeaway. So yeah, don't forget, everybody, check out that template there in the show notes. And then let us know, how things are going with the training and how they're being put together. We'd love to hear about it. Love the feedback. Lets us know that what we're doing is putting out the right stuff. So that's it for us today. Have a great day.